Today is Sunday, August 6, 2017. This is Celtics Beat on the CLNS Media Network, and I am Larry H. Russell. The long-awaited off-season in review broadcast is now on course to take place and being appraised by not just yours truly, but also B-Ball Breakdown's Coach Nick on episode number 221 of Celtics Beat, being presented by today's sponsor, Audible. With an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more, get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial at audible.com/CelticsBeat. A good time to reflect on what was unquestionably the busiest summer in Boston since the famed summer of '07. Not only do most of us hope the fruits will be as sweet as they were a decade ago, but dare we simply ask, Coach Nick, and everyone, how much better did the Celtics even get?
It's a really, really great question. Probably one of the best questions you can ask on this offseason because there's a lot of moves going on there. And, when you add someone like Gordon Hayward, you're better. Like, I would say you're better with him versus Avery Bradley in the lineup in theory, although I know the defensive stuff is really important for them, especially with Isaiah Thomas. So, but I think if you take enough steps back, you realize that, yes, they are better on that end. I like the Morris thing, except that now they have an even bigger glut in the forward position. And so you suddenly give Brad Stevens a lot, more of a puzzle to have to solve. And I would imagine the first 2 months might be a little bit wonky until he can figure it out.
Oh, that's been the theme going around. Actually, I haven't had anyone, Coach Nick of B-Ball Breakdown, youtube.com/B-Ball Breakdown. You're the first person who said, I like the Marcus Morris edition. So please sell me on Marcus Morris.
Well, he's got a certain sense of, toughness. He's played, for a few teams now and probably better understands the importance of his role and might not, bristle at that like he might have earlier in his career. And I would have no doubt Brad Stevens can figure out how to make it work. And, it kind of sounds like the starting lineup is interesting to me here because if the team remains intact the way it is now, if you bring Morris off the bench, that's a really good position for him to be in, where he can be, a good scoring forward for you, and then you can still have guys like Crowder in the starting lineup and do some damage there.
How much could he fill that Kelly Olynyk role? I assume he's coming off the bench. I assume he's going to be someone who can stretch the floor. They don't have really anyone off the bench with that size that can do so. On a percentage scale or on a 1 to 10 scale, how much could he fill that role?
Well, it's interesting because the Olynyk thing, I was always really high on him.
Very big on him. That breakdown in January, man, where you demanded more minutes, we know Brad Stevens watched that video.
Well, I don't know if he did, but certainly people in the probably did. But nonetheless, they see the same stuff I'm seeing, and in fact, I'm sure he saw it before I did, so I was probably late. But either way, I looked at the numbers because Olynyk in the regular season actually, when he was on, was a negative 0.4. When he's off, the team was plus 5.4. So that wasn't necessarily indicative of much. However, in the playoffs, he was a plus 1, and when he was off, the team was a negative 5.3. So that, to me, showed me that there was some real value to him. He played very well in the playoffs for them and was very versatile in a way that Morris can still give you that. I don't know defensively if he can really handle any kind of big guy like Olynyk could conceivably handle because of he's just bigger and just bigger as physically. But there's no question that Morris does give you a little bit more variation and a little bit more maybe attack on the dribble kind of stuff that Olynyk did. It's a totally different look, bottom line. Olynyk was a better passer, though, and was probably a better help defender. So it's a real question. I might still say Olynyk was something that they're not quite covering yet with his absence.
What about shooting, though? I think that's really what it comes down to. If Morris can shoot, because actually Olynyk really did not shoot the ball well last year. We think of him as a good shooter. He did not have a really great year shooting beyond the arc, but nonetheless, he did spread the floor. Is Morris going to be able to do that?
I think so. I think he's a solid three-point shooter, and I think that in this offense, with the way they drive and kick and force closeouts, if he will accept that style, then I would anticipate him getting more open shots. And so, I would think that would be what happens, and I think he would be able to knock them down with some regularity. Again, enough to keep the defense half a step closer to him than not.
Okay, that's good enough to hear. Although I didn't really like necessarily hearing if he will accept that role. That is you just saying that as a hypothetical, or is that actually something I have to worry about, or any other Celtics fan for that matter?
maybe don't worry about it because Brad Stevens has some sort of magic elixir to do that. But it's like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope also played for the Pistons last year and for several years and was underachieving from the 3-point line. And I can't figure out why, because his mechanics look good and everything should be a lot better. It's a lot about shot selection, and I have a feeling that the dysfunction of the Pistons probably affected that, where guys were trying to like get their own. They weren't really playing like a team. And I feel like once KCP gets to the Lakers, and I kind of feel like the same way with Morris, once he gets to the Celtics, the shots will be different, the mindset will be different, and and I'm choosing to believe at this point in the middle of summer that those percentages will rise.
Bullish on Marcus Morris. I am certainly surprised, but nonetheless, you were as bullish as anybody on Kelly Olynyk. This last week we had our newest hire to CLNS Media, Mike Petraglia, who yesterday was down at Gillette Stadium covering the Patriots for training camp. All the videos, pressers up on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Media. Avery Bradley may be the better player than Kelly Olynyk. If you're going to have one of these giant, massive drafts where you're drafting every single player throughout the league, Avery Bradley is going to be taken by every single team possible, probably before Kelly Olynyk. Nonetheless, I personally think that Kelly Olynyk is going to be a bigger loss because I am not sure they are going to fill the skills, the unique skills that Olynyk brought. I'm still not totally sold on Marcus Morris being able to do that. Avery Bradley, I think they're going to be able to. We're certainly going to get that part of that discussion a little later as we go on. How about, where do you? Bigger loss for the Celtics, Olynyk or Bradley?
I guess I'm going to go with Olynyk. I like Bradley. I should like Bradley more from a coaching perspective, but for some reason, there's just something about him. Like, I know he's shooting really improved to the point where you cannot deny the guy is as close to an elite shooter as you're going to get. And by the way, that's another reason why maybe Morris, I think, will shoot better too, because of that progression that we saw with Bradley. He's a great defender, probably, top 2 or 3 in the league on the perimeter, right? Like, I can't think of too many guys who are as good as him. But undersized, and I can't say he doesn't come through in the clutch, because he did it in the playoffs as well. So I don't know. I'm torn, because you're right. The things that Olynyk does, and if he continues to develop and get better, now you can have a guy at the 5 position that could play like a 3-ish. And that is a lot more profound of an effect on the game than a smaller 2 guard doing his thing.
Yeah, I'll get into this a little bit later when we get into the lineups, because you just mentioned how you don't know what the starting lineup is going to be, Coach. And I'm one who's very confident that Jaylen Brown is going to be in it to give that component of defensive versatility. Talked about it with Trags last week. But anyways, this is our official off-season review show for the Celtics, one in which we can finally do in the first week of August, and doing it with you. Nick, you're doing your off-season grades for every team on your B-Ball Breakdown podcast, available to listeners on the CLNS Media Network mobile app. You haven't gotten to the Celts yet, so we're actually going to steal it here to accommodate our dear listeners. So, Coach Nick, grade for the Celtics for their summer of 2017.
You got to give them a solid, I would say B for getting Hayward and then Morris. By the way, I like Baines too. I'm going to give him a B+. And maybe by the end of the show, I'll be an A-. We'll see. But I like those moves, because I think Baines now, remind me, is Amir Johnson still there?
Gone. Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, right. So I like that, because I just felt like Amir was not really that effective, and I feel like Baines can be effective in his role too, as a guy as like the third big man off the bench. So I like what they did, but you have to imagine, and then also drafting Tatum, that whole move, which we can get into in a minute too. A lot of great moves. I just feel like we're left wanting when you realize that Paul George went to OKC for what he went for. And I know that Danny Ainge must be scratching his head too, because that deal they ended up making with OKC in Indiana, that deal would have been there for weeks. They didn't have to take that deal right away when they did. So it's really confusing to me on a lot of levels.
We know. But it's more an indictment on OKC, man, not the Celtics. And I would love to say, but I thought brought it up that, I would love to say that it was probably the worst non-move or the best non-move or whatever about this offseason with the Celtics. I think we can unanimously agree on that. I would love to have a segment on it, but we can agree that probably quote unquote missing out on Paul George. Just ended up having. But how about the draft day trade? What did you think of the draft day trade? Because that would be the only other, quote unquote, worst move or potential for, or maybe even best move. So, what did you think of the trade on draft day?
It's interesting because they already had a kind of a full backcourt in theory with Isaiah Thomas and Avery Bradley at the time, and Marcus Smart, and Rozier. Then even Rozier is coming up, right? And so, but it's hard to imagine because Fultz is really going to be really good. But do they want to have a rookie point guard running the show in the midst of like competing with Cleveland for the conference final?
I think he would have been running the show this year, though.
Well, I mean,
running the show this year. It would have been about setting it up for future years. Maybe in the post the Isaiah Thomas era. Spot.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I suppose what they looked at it was like, I mean, this is the kind of guy that you want to install and give him all that, all the experience right away and get him developing quicker because he is that good. And they weren't going to be able to do that, I guess, what they were thinking. And so, I guess they're all in on IT. They're not going to trade him, and which I think they should. So it makes sense to me that they would have said, okay, we can kind of get some more out of this stuff, And so the only thing that's weird is that they add Tatum, and he's now going to languish. He's probably not going to play hardly at all this year, right behind all these forwards. And so
you never know. I didn't think Jaylen Brown was going to play much last year, and they ended up just even when he was playing atrocious in around December. They were still finding a way to give him 4 to 6 minutes a night in the second quarter, and sure enough, he worked his way into the rotation. So I would have been so quick on that.
Well, okay, so let's just pretend he's developed more. He's got that experience. He's ahead of him. So is Marcus Morris probably. So is what's his face from Marquette.
Crowder.
Oh my God.
Crowder.
What? Crowder's ahead of him. I don't know if we consider Hayward a 2-guard or a 3. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know. It just feels like there's not going to be a ton of. I mean, I'll be willing to go on the record and say he won't get 8 minutes a game. I don't think.
Ooh, okay, all right.
I just don't see it unless they make a move or somebody gets hurt. Which is always a possibility as well.
Possibility. I think he could. I think he could supplant anything that Marcus Morris does towards the end of the season. I'm a little bearish on Morris compared to what you've been thinking, but I guess I hate to use the political of we will have to wait and see to find out. Nonetheless, we are going to have to wait and see to find out. You made an interesting point about Isaiah Thomas. That is the underlying storyline of the offseason, no question about it, and that he is going to be pretty much in the future plans for the Celtics. That was the whole thing as it came down with the trade. But now that we're on this trade, so got to make a mental note, Isaiah Thomas thing that you said. But we are on the trade, the Hayward signing. So I asked for the worst move or the worst non-move. What was the best move? Was the best move signing Gordon Hayward? Was the best move the draft day trade? After all, what was the best move? Was the best move the Marcus Morris trade, which I never know I could get from you? What was the best move Celtics made?
Yeah, no. I mean, listen. Obviously, I think the best move is Hayward, is getting him, and they wanted him, and they wanted to reunite him with Brad Stevens. I mean, I don't think that he is the best player on a finals team. Hayward is not. And I think we've seen his ceiling. I think what he did last year is what he's going to do. And I think that's fine. It's a really good, upgrade at that position. But the question is, do you disrupt the subtle chemistry they had going and they were building? And, there were
that's
some
why I
players.
Asked you at the very beginning of this podcast, did the Celtics get better? And you said yes.
They did. I mean, they did on a talent standpoint. Again, we're going to pull the political. We'll have to wait and see a little bit here because, But here's the thing: if it was anybody but Gordon Hayward, then you might think, oh, he's going to be very disruptive and whatever. But Hayward seems to be the kind of player that's going to blend in and be able to find his spots. In fact, he might be too deferential in the beginning. I can almost feel that until he says, you know what, I need to be more of the man. Although he's going to have to deal with Isaiah. And, I don't know. There's so many moving parts here. But I would predict that Hayward's going to come in and average his 22 points a game and shoot, pretty well from 3, and get his assists, get, his 3.5 assists. I think that's what we're going to get from him, which might be enough.
Describe here, because I know you were a little burned out to do so on your YouTube channel, youtube.com/BreeBallBreakdown, to actually do a Gordon Hayward in the Celtics offense breakdown visually. So the biggest challenge for you, man, is going to have to do it in an audio format and create pictures for our audience who can actually only hear you. If they want to see you, they got to go to your YouTube channel. But nonetheless, for them to hear you, you're going to have to describe how the Celtics will utilize Hayward in the offense and really just describe the whole offense.
So what you're going to see with Hayward in the offense for the Celtics is probably what they're going to probably just plug him into what the Avery Bradley role was. And you're going to see a lot of sort of driving kick and maybe some early offensive, some handoffs, or maybe a quick pick and roll on top to get the defense moving. And that's really what is similar to what the Jazz did. So I feel like Hayward will be very comfortable jumping into this offense. I do hope that they're going to give him some more post-ups as well because he'll probably have some size advantages on some of the players that are guarding him. And also, I have to imagine you're going to find Hayward driving more and generating more free throws than Avery Bradley. And I think that's going to be the difference. And in fact, if he embraces the man role more and being that number one option, or maybe if Isaiah Thomas is out, then you'll see him driving even more and have like a career high in free throw attempts. And that'll all really help the Celtics offense. And the only question left is what happens down the stretch in the end. They already have the guy they need in Isaiah Thomas in theory. And as him as a second guy in that setting, I think would really help them. And he could be that guy that can knock down, tough shots in pressure situations as a second guy. So, I'm intrigued, and I think that they'll work it out. It might take a little bit of time, but eventually they're going to be a dangerous club and down the stretch.
Episode number 221 of Celtics Beat is being presented by Audible. Audible content includes an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazine and newspaper publishers, and business information providers. One book I would suggest is from CLNS Media's very own and frequent guest on Celtics Beat, the legendary Bob Ryan. Get Mr. Ryan's memoirs, Scribe, My Life in Sports, immerse yourself in the well-versed sporting world over an iconic journalistic career that spanned nearly 50 years here in the Hub. And for your loyal listenership to CLNS Media, Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audible.com/CelticsBeat and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audible.com/CelticsBeat. That's audible.com/CelticsBeat and get started today. So more Brad Stevens experimentation.
And to the expense of perhaps some wins and losses, wouldn't you say?
Well, it played out last year and the season before that and the season before that, so that's kind of a safe prediction.
Yeah, right. And you know what? It worked out okay. They made the conference finals. They got a game. They now improved. So, the process is working for me.
Well, they've improved as a team every year under Brad Stevens, so that's been a trend. It's going to be tough this year to meet that accomplishment. I mean, that's north of 55 wins in the NBA Finals now. If we have time, I can ask that later. But one thing on our agenda, Coach, and we're back here on Celtics Beat with CLNS Media contributor, B-Ball Breakdowns Coach Nick. Made a mental note on this podcast out loud to save it. You got subtle shots in at Isaiah Thomas, so I figure now is the time. Am I laying it on a tee for you by asking which Celtic is most likely to regress this coming season? I mean, one would think the easy choice would be Al Horford, but I don't know. Is it IT?
I mean, my first instinct would be Horford. I've been really down on Horford for the last year anyway. It might be irrational. And let's just make it clear, Isaiah Thomas, I was the first guy on the Isaiah Thomas bandwagon.
You were the first, love him. Ever.
Yeah.
And you put yourself out there the most as well.
You wouldn't believe how much. I mean, I had people trying to look into me to discredit me personally because of that video I did about Isaiah versus KYRIE after their rookie years. So I love Isaiah. I know him. He's a great guy. It's enthralling to watch him play. I mean, really is amazing what he's done. So I don't want to rain on that parade at all. I do feel like there might be some limit there as far as, the bottom line is the defensive side is just they struggle with him in there, even though he's uplifted them enough to get him to where they needed to go on a lot of those games. So I don't know. It just felt like, they probably could have gotten a lot for him. And if they would have gotten Fultz and you plug him in and develop him, quickly, then man, it seems like they're ready to take the step for championship level. Is that what I'm saying? I guess what I'm saying is Isaiah Thomas a starter on a title team? I guess I'm
a starter. I think he could be a starter.
Can he start on a championship team?
Yeah, of course he could.
Okay. Well, I guess that's where I'm hedging at this point right now, and so we'll have to see. So I don't know. I'm looking in long term.
Listen. It is the story of the offseason. That trade the Celtics made prior to draft night when they passed on Markelle Fultz, because I personally thought it was a slam dunk that they were going to be able to bring Markelle Fultz in here and almost play, I don't know, this is a bad example, but you sort of get my drift. Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre for a little bit, Let him,
right.
And be able to do that. Then that way, in coming years, you let Isaiah Thomas go. You don't want to pay him what we all think is a little questionable. We pay him a pretty sufficient max salary for what's going to be years north of 30. Yet that trade, it wasn't just we thought Jason Tatum was the best player available. That trade in itself was we believe in Isaiah Thomas down the line. I'm skeptical of that. I know you're very skeptical of that. You said that the Celtics should explore trading him or should trade him.
Yeah, well, I was the guy who said they needed to trade McHale but when they didn't do that, and they should have.
Oh, I remember when you said that.
And so it's it's a business, and it's terrible. I know it, and he's a hero, and you never want to do that. That's why they didn't trade McHale or anybody. But this is also a business. And if you're looking, you got to be able to keep going and have your the team keeps playing after these guys are done playing. And it was a good opportunity from a general manager standpoint to get the most value you'll ever get for him ever. And they decided not to do that. They're going to ride it out, and that's fine. Hip injuries also make me very, very nervous.
That had me right on the agenda. How do you think he's going to come back from that? Especially since he didn't have surgery.
So, you know what? You have to remind me because I can't remember exactly what the hip injury was.
It was in the playoffs against Washington.
Yeah,
you're asking me for anatomy? No, I don't think.
Was it like a torn labrum, or I don't remember what they said, or just a general hip thing?
I do not recall. I'm going to bump your gums, and I'm going to have to Google it.
He played through it, right?
Yes, he got hurt against Washington. That is what I do know.
And then
a couple games against Cleveland, it didn't really work out.
Right, and so that was concerning to me because a lot of times those hip injuries, it feels okay for a little bit, and then you realize, oh my God, I can't. It's too excruciating. So that is a real interesting issue. And that's something you have to watch out for because it can linger. It could cause the hip could actually be back, and it could be presenting itself as a hip injury. So that said, I have the feeling that the Celtics have a pretty good medical staff, so they'll be able to keep it up.
Well, they just basically cleaned house there.
They did. Okay. Yes. Well, there's some serious red flags, age and hip and all those things. So I don't know. I'm worried because he's not like he needs that. He needs every ounce of his, water bug movement to succeed. And a couple inches here or there, those shots get blocked. He doesn't get him over the big guy, and then all of a sudden they have a problem.
Well, you're correct, though. He had a labral tear. Actually, he suffered it in early March. I knew it was very evident against Washington in the playoffs. And you'll have to help me with femoral. Oh, boy, I'm really going to just destroy what little credibility I have left on this podcast trying to pronounce this. Femoral ectolobar impingement. Yes.
So that's what I had. And that's sort of why I know what this is. And I've had 2 surgeries on it. You know what? And I never got back to my my original all-star status. But when you're young enough there, and I had it young. I had the surgery when I was like 37 and recovered pretty well. But it's brutal and it's tough. The first surgery didn't work. I had to have a different kind of surgery the second time. But it also tends to indicate structural issues that you can't escape. It's just the beginning of the end of arthritis.
Yeah, how does like posture and compensate how you, let alone walk, but even run.
Right, exactly. It's mechanics, and it's hard to change mechanics at this age. We saw Steph Curry do that with his ankles, and by the way, out of all that, the way he changed the way he moved, he became, probably the best point guard of all time. And so, that's a great story, and that could happen as well. But you gotta really get out there and be aware of mechanics and all that stuff. That's like next level stuff that a lot of NBA teams sort of are in touch with, but we'll have to see whether or not that's going to take, and if they have him on that kind of program.
Yeah, it's not good. I've always been very skittish of him north of 30, largely because many small guards, such as Isaiah Thomas, the real one, Allen Iverson, really do not have a great career after the age of 30. The biggest thing that Isaiah has going for him really is his speed. And if you start losing a shred of agility, of speed, that's it. That's all the difference in the world of getting into the basket and getting around a defender and getting a shot over a defender or not.
Right. And the way he does it, by the way, is he gets into the body of the guy. So he does take a pounding. And it's not surprising that, like, those are the kind of injuries you get in the hips because you're leveraging your speed and weight into the body and then kind of taking the contact and finishing. It might not even get the foul, but that threat of the contact there ends up getting the opening he needs. And so, it's not great. I wish him the best, and I really hope that he recovers 100%. But you're right. It's a lot of red flags right now.
Isaiah, most likely to regress, but still most likely an all-star. Same as Al Horford. He could regress, but I think at a slow rate, and he's going to be able to do, especially now that it looks like, I think even he is resigned to being a center next year, which I think is going to be very beneficial to him and to the Celtics.
Well, look at it this way. And Isaiah averaged 29 points a game last year. The highest was Avery Bradley at 16.3. I can guarantee you that Gordon Hayward's going to average more points, more shots. Well, who's going to give those shots up? I would imagine Isaiah would end up having to give up some of those shots, and that would then indicate that he'd go down to, probably 25 a game, 24. But you're right. If he's at 25 and, 6 assists and, 3 rebounds, that's probably, he still would be he probably would feel robbed if he didn't make the All-Star game.
Internal improvements from the team. Feels like the only candidate really is Jaylen Brown, just by default. Yeah. I guess you could go deep and say, Terry Rozier. I'll throw one real wild card at you. You said he is what he is earlier in the podcast. I'm not sure. This man's made improvements every single year, just like Avery Bradley, except at an even more substantial level. Gordon Hayward has gotten better every single year he's been in the league, but most likely to make internal improvements.
I don't know. I think I like Rozier as a possible guy. I was watching Patrick McCaw in the summer league for the Warriors, and he has made like a 200% jump in that brief time. And I can only imagine that that Rozier should get more confidence coming out of that last season. And there were signs. That's the other thing. You saw little bits and pieces of that. But yeah, I would think that Jaylen Brown. Yeah, I would be shocked if he started. I don't know why I'd be shocked. It just feels like I wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, I want to ask you right now on the dime then why you would be shocked he would start. They were 10-1 with him in the starting lineup last year.
Oh, they were? Okay, that's a good stat.
In January, when Avery Bradley initially went out with an injury, they played very well. In fact, they were. Yeah, sorry.
And by the way, and you're right. And you know what? He's got a very mature game for a young guy, which always was something that made me really excited about him. So, yeah, listen, maybe they say, okay, we're going to give you the keys, and we're going to start the season off with you, and we'll see how it goes. If it ends up being a problem, I'm sure Stevens wouldn't hesitate to change things up, but. I like that idea, and certainly the options they have out of that defensively.
The defense, that's what I was going to get to you, because if you have that lineup, and I'm interrupting you because that's what I do very, very well. You have a lineup, well, not with Isaiah, but okay, Isaiah, Jaylen at the 2, Gordon Hayward, Jay Crowder up front, Al Horford. I feel like that you put that lineup out there, they're playing a sufficient amount of time together. I think Boston's defense is far more apt to return to form that we were accustomed to in 2015 and 2016. A lot more length, a lot more versatility, and also Horford back at center, which is, I think, very important as well.
Right. No, I like that. I like going small with Crowder at the power forward. I think he is that prototypical power forward we're going to see going forward anyway. And by the way, he might be a guy who makes a little bit of a jump. You never know. Like maybe with Hayward in there, taking some pressure off of people and making some more space. Sometimes it's the guys that, that he'll get some more open shots maybe. And he already proved that he shot really well from 3 during the regular season. So, you know what? Crowder could be that guy that makes another jump too. Maybe, and is able to get some more rebounds and stuff like that too. So, it's really, really intriguing. And they have a lot of different possibilities now. Because if that's the starting lineup, then you have a nice little bench coming off the bench as well. And and again, as far as I can tell, they're solidified as the number 2 team in the East. I don't think that, Toronto is ultimately going to make it. And then we have to see Washington did absolutely nothing in the offseason when they were the only other team that had any chance to make a significant jump, and they completely just punted.
Yeah, even did you see the ESPN projections that came out? Our man Kevin Pelton, good for. I was almost going to say I should have had Kevin Pelton on this show over you, Coach Nick, because KP does a really good job of getting in the news in August. It's incredible. And he put out the projections about the Celtics with 49 wins, yet that being good enough for the 1 seed. I thought that was wow. It wasn't just the 49 wins that was a wow, because I made a point here with Trags last week, which actually Pelton said that was a part of the reason the Celtics came out of 49 wins was, their point differential last year was I think 2.6 or 2.4 or something like that, which was not very good. And it was something I remember I said on your B-Ball Breakdown podcast on the CLNS Media Network mobile app when I was on your show back in January. I kept saying, yeah, this team is due for regression of the means. This team's due for regression of the means. They're due for regression of the means. They keep winning all these close games, and they just kept winning freaking close games all the way through till the first week of June in the Eastern Conference Finals. KP was saying, that could come back to bite them a little bit next year. But so, what did you make if you saw them at all?
Well, listen, I love Kevin Pelton, and I like to think I'm infinitely more interesting and exciting, right? But however, I don't see how you can possibly base any prediction on this year from last year's team because it's so radically different now when you have Hayward in the lineup. It doesn't, you know what I mean? And you're missing some other guys. So nothing from last year would really indicate to me how you'd be able to predict that accurately. I could see him plugging in PER and all that kind of stuff to figure out, with the current team. But man, if he's using anything from last year, then that's probably, I would disagree vehemently with that.
I want to go back a little bit on predictions because we were talking about internal improvements. We were talking about starting lineup predictions. Do you have, if you've looked it all over, do you have any interesting five-man units the Celtics could use, let alone be in the starting lineup or something popular, off the bench in the second quarter? Because you just said that you really like Boston's potential bench if they went with Thomas, Brown, Hayward, Crowder, Horford. If you give that one shred of thought whatsoever, Coach?
Yeah, I'm thinking you could do some really fun stuff where you can go really. It's usually when you go small, right? That's when you kind of figure out.
Yeah, I hate that big lineup that people would throw on. Oh, Baines at the center, Horford at the 4. That would be not good in my opinion. Or Zizek at the 5 or whatever.
Well, let me say this because I do feel like there is, people are like, oh, you can't play two traditional big men at the same time anymore. And I kind of disagree with that. I never like to have anyone tell me never of anything. But, then the question is, okay, if you want to go really small, then who do you have at center, right, that can really do that? And they don't really have anybody else besides Horford and Baines. What's that, Marcus
Morris?
Morris.
That would be greenish fives, type thing.
Yeah, it would be insane. That's what you would need because, when you see even Kevin Durant at center, that's really when it's fun. And they don't have a guy like that as far as I can tell. So you're right. If you want to do it, you run out Marcus Morris at center, but then you can go big in the backcourt. You can go Hayward and Jaylen Brown in the backcourt, something crazy like that, right?
Marcus Smart.
Yeah, Marcus Smart, but he's not big, right? He's small.
Well, he's 6'4", but he's strong enough to guard power forward sometimes.
I want to stand next to him. Is he a legit 6'4"?
He's listed. But we don't know, right? That's even it was a legit. Just like Isaiah Thomas is really 5'7", not 5'9".
Right. I did an interview with Isaiah Thomas, and I'm 6 feet. You could see that whatever he's listed as wrong. But Marcus Smart and Terry Rozier, I want to see them stand next to each other because I think that they're probably the same height. But either way, why not go huge in the backcourt with Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward, and then go tiny with Marcus Morris at center, and then you throw out there, then you could do Jay Crowder and Marcus Smart that way. That's even weirder, but I don't know. That would be fun. I doubt that ever would happen, but that's the kind of stuff. I like big backcourts and I like small centers, so that's what I'm looking at.
Duly passed along to Brad Stevens. He sincerely takes your words and your visuals very seriously, as we saw in January. This is my favorite. I did this last week. Really shouldn't have been on the off-season review show. By the way, we are, 35 minutes into this? Have you raised your grade yet, or is it still at B+? You started at B, went to B+ in 5 seconds. You said maybe
I'm still at
So give me the final one now.
B+.
The one in red ink, B+. Okay. This is the fun question I love. I had Mike Petralia here last week, as we mentioned, on episode 220 of Celtics Beat. And we did a schedule predictions, because I don't know why I love having, doing some fun with predicting the schedule. He brought up a very good point when he said that he expects the Celtics to play the Cavs on Christmas Day, largely because the NBA doesn't really want to stack the deck with one really game that's really worth watching to the casual NBA fan on Christmas. Spread the love around a little bit. Maybe Celtics Cavs, have Golden State play the Spurs, Golden State play the Rockets. That'd be very interesting. And then he had Celtics Sixers on opening night, which I thought was very pragmatic in its own right. Make it official. I am Celtics Cavs in the opener, Celtics-Lakers is the back end of that quintuple header on Christmas. Give me your little Celtics predictions. Opener and Christmas. I guess we don't really care about anything else.
Right. It's interesting because the Christmas Day thing is where I went first, and I thought, if they're going to try and spread the love around and not do, Cavs Warriors, then, yeah, it kind of makes sense to do Cavs Celtics, although I still feel like they might end up doing, Celtics Lakers as a throwback, although that doesn't even mean anything to anybody anymore, it feels like at this point. But the Lakers actually might be a surprising team. The Sixers are also really intriguing, and that does sound like a certain, I feel like they want to start the season with guys without teams traveling too far, and that kind of makes sense too, with the Celtics and the Sixers. And by the way, Philly should be a team that everybody in the East is frightened of. I mean, they have the potential to be a really good team very quickly.
Really good team, so that means playoff team automatically. Not to turn this into Sixers beat and to steal everything from Derek Bodner, but.
And remember, you can look at the historical jump. Like, no team has ever gone from 20 wins to 40. But this
1980
is not,
Celtics. But they added Larry Bird.
But they tanked, didn't they? Tank the year before?
No, they were just terrible. They were terrible in '78 and terrible in '79, and that rookie Larry Bird showed up, and they won 60.
Hey, I wouldn't have put it past Red Auerbach to tank without knowing what he was doing. Like, they didn't have a name for it. But anyway,
those were terrible teams back then. Those late 70s Celtics were dark.
They knew about Larry Bird ahead of time, and they drafted him. Remember, they drafted him early before he came out. So once they drafted Bird that year before, they knew they were going to tank because they weren't getting a good player that year. They had to wait. So I don't know. And that, by the way, that led to the whole, everything else, the steal of McHale and Parrish. But nonetheless. So where were we? We're talking about
the Sixers being a playoff team next year.
Yeah. So because of their artificially low record, them getting to normal respectability where they should be, it might break historical norms. So it wouldn't be surprising to me. So yeah, I can go. I think that makes the most sense to me right now. Is because the Knicks, otherwise it's the Celtics Knicks or something like that, like trying to revive that kind of notion. But I like that idea of the Philly and the Celtics to start, and then I'm thinking Lakers Celtics Christmas Day.
Okay, all right. So you stole each one from each of us.
Yes.
It is August, and we went a little bit down the line with some historical. Are you doing any history runs there on B-Ball Breakdown in August as we get closer somewhat to training camp? It is the dog days after all.
Oh, it is. It is. Here's what I'm going to do right now, today, maybe I'll research tomorrow, is I want to do a video entitled, Is Isaiah Thomas Better Than Allen Iverson?
We've had that discussion.
Yeah.
I said last year that his season last year was better than AI's 01 MVP year.
Yeah, I mean, because I have to kind of try and dive into some actual game footage to see, to remind myself of Iverson's defensive prowess or lack thereof, to see if there's any comparison there. But yeah, I mean, the season that Isaiah Thomas had last year, man, probably eclipses whatever, there was a 30-point a game. There was a couple of those in Iverson's career too, but it was on much lower field goal percentage, right?
Yes, like 39, 41%. He was always in and around that area.
Apologies for the microphone issues. Got some static there. Luckily, the computer input served in the emergency situation. That could have really gone awry. So I hope it was of service, our conversation with Coach Nick. Because there it was, the capper on the Celtics offseason. I pushed it off as far as I humanly could. Not by choice, actually. I was going to do it here 2 weeks ago. But we were told there were a few things going on, a few things still to happen, and boom, Celtics signed Shane Larkin to a guaranteed contract, creating a new potential and riveting storyline for the all-important final roster spot heading into training camp. One storyline is going to dominate the Celtics blogosphere and internet communities come September. Oh, we eagerly await. And, of course, the other move, or moves made around then, that pertaining to the medical staff. I just wanted to say that I'm very happy that everyone in the local media is conveniently on board after the fact with some of the calls that were made around here numerous times over the last 4 years on this particular podcast. Thank you. There was no reason for me to harp on it. If I had to applaud one move besides the Hayward signing, that was it. But yes, I'm right now I'm very, very happy those in the local media, the local terrestrial media specifically, have come around at this opportune time. We were happy to be of service. Eat your grass-fed organic steak while you're at it, too, by the way. Nonetheless, That was Coach Nick of B-Ball Breakdown. Follow and converse with the man on Twitter at B-Ball Breakdown, youtube.com/B-Ball Breakdown, and of course, listen to him on the CLNS Media Network mobile app, the B-Ball Breakdown podcast. Before we go, do want to pass along a plug that pertains to yours truly. Tomorrow on the CLNS Media mobile app, I will be hosting a show not on the Celtics, not on sports. First off, we want to officially welcome the Emerson College Polling Society. Many of you who followed last year's U.S. elections are very familiar with ECPS as being one of the most accurate polls in the political field. So tomorrow, that being Monday, August 7th, I will be hosting the Emerson College Polling Weekly podcast tomorrow, that is. I'll be talking to noted polling expert Professor Spencer Kimball, previewing the Republican primary for Jeff Sessions' U.S. Senate seat in Alabama. The fate of the country is at stake, so do tune in, if for no other reason, to hear me, I guess. So, we'll cap the Boston Celtics 2017 off-season in review extravaganza on episode number 221 of Celtics Beat on that. Today's show was presented by Audible. If you want to listen to it, Audible has it with unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio titles, news, comedy, and more. You'll find what you're looking for. Get a free audiobook with a 30-day trial today by signing up at audible.com/CelticsBeat. All one word, Celtics Beat. Music for today's show was provided by Chuck Dietz and Steph Legrateau. For graphic designer Scott Dillon, the founder of the network, Nick Gelso, this is Larry H. Russell, the executive producer and host, signing off for Celtics Beat, powered by CLNS Media.